a large part of the reason that I wrote Ayn Rand and the World She Made was to trace, as well as I could, the influences on Ayn Rand's work and thought from her life and reading. She often said that there weren't, at the end of her life, she often said that she had no influences other than Aristotle and Victor Hugo and a few others. So I didn't believe that, and I set out to look into it. So I'm going to read you a little bit about the basis in biography of the Fountainhead. In one form or another, Ayn Rand had been daydreaming about Howard Roark all her life. In figure, he is tall, thin to the point of gauntness, and almost always rigid with creative tension, although in repose he can be as supple as a cat. He possesses Cyrus's moral certainty. Cyrus was a childhood hero that Ayn Rand found and liked very much. He possesses Cyrus's moral certainty, self-confidence, and even insolence. Like Zarathustra, he welcomes difficulties that propel him beyond ordinary drab humanity to the foundation of new values. Like Enjolras, he is single-minded in pursuit of his goal. He differs from Leo Kovalensky, who's one of the heroes of We the Living, in that nothing can shake his self-esteem, and from Andrei Taganov, in that he has no desire to convert others to his creed. He would walk over corpses to be an architect, one of the characters says about him. No matter what inducements or penalties he faces, he won't compromise his architectural vision by a single pilaster. He is not afraid of disappointment or of pain. In her notes, Ayn Rand calls him the noble soul par excellence, paying homage to Nietzsche's definition of a hero as a soul that has reverence for itself. He is the archetype of the creator in a dissipated world. As he leaves Stanton Architectural School for New York to pursue his career, he soon discovers that almost everyone will try to stop him. That's a reference to a piece of dialogue that's a little bit earlier in the book. Familiar to Rand as this character was, not least because it resembled her own character, Roark did not provide the first germ of the idea for the Fountainhead. His glossy, callow schoolmate and opposite number, Peter Keating, did. Rand liked to tell the story of how she conceived of Peter Keating, who gave the novel its original title, Second-Hand Lives. In 1931 or 1932, while she was still living on North Gower Street in Hollywood and clerking at in the wardrobe department at RKO, she became fascinated by her next-door neighbor, Marcella Bannert, the young woman who had helped her to place Red Pond at Universal Pictures. Marcella was an executive assistant to David O. Selznick, at that time RKO's chief of production, and she was ambitious. Every day, the Russian emigre observed the American go-getter, admiring her obvious drive but disliking almost everything else about her, including her choice of a career and the impression she gave of being a Hollywood climber. One day, to pin down the differences between them, Rand asked the young woman to explain what she wanted to achieve in life. Marcella had a ready answer. If nobody had an automobile, she said, she would not want an automobile. If some people had an automobile and others didn't, she would want an automobile. If somebody had two and others only had one or none, she would want two automobiles and so on. And she would want people to know that she had more than they did. The conversation was a revelation to Rand. By her standards, Marcella seemed not to want anything for herself. Rand's goal was to create a fiction of ideas out of her experience and extraordinary gift for imagining and reasoning. Marcella merely wanted to outstrip the Joneses. The prickly young moral philosopher's judgments about people were based on whether they shared her values and her sense of life. Marcella appeared to have no values, except those derived from other people. She prized what they prized and wanted more of whatever they had, evidently to fill an emptiness inside. Although some people might have called Marcella selfish because she set her sights on luxury and status, Rand didn't look at it that way. On reflection, she saw that the young woman was actually selfless, in the sense that she had no authentic self with which to desire or create anything, that was hers alone. Marcella's quality of selflessness or lack of passionately held ideas and values explained why she and so many other people Rand knew conformed to apparently meaningless conventions. It gave her the key to a problem that had puzzled her since childhood: why people who were so much less intelligent and passionate than she was treated her with such unfriendly indifference or even malice, seemingly because of her gifts. Pondering her conversation with Marcella, she concluded that her resolve to do and think what she wanted, so different from what others seemed to want, challenged the premises of their existence. Not only was she a genius surrounded by mediocrities, as her mother had often reminded her in letters, she also possessed a moral independence and integrity that others did not. To some degree, she, like her 1934 character Kay Gonda, shamed them merely by living. Marcella's admission stirred a broader revelation. It explained the psychological source of what she called the collectivist motivation, by which she meant the drive to seek the meaning of one's life outside oneself. Collectivists hunger for an all-knowing deity, an altruistic purpose, or a dictator to tell them what to do, as a fig leaf for their own inadequacy and emptiness. They love what is average and selfish, and fear what is exceptional, original, and has to be created by the self. Such people live by others' choices. They exist at second hand. The absence of an authentic selfishness, that is a desire to live according to one's own principles, based on the action of one's own mind. This, she decided, was what the Bolshevik mobs, Russian Orthodox votaries, and ordinary Americans had in common. And so Peter Keating was born with the soul of a second-hander. Vain, affable, dependent on his popularity for self-respect, and without specific talent, he enters the book in a mild state of adolescent self-inflation and ends in a frightening and irreversible moral decay. Unlike his college housemate Rourke, he graduates from Stanton at the top of his class amid a sea of envious admirers, yet he has no gift for architecture. He leans on Rourke for help with his most difficult assignments and cheerfully stabs competitors in the back. He hates Rourke's asceticism, talent, and purpose, as well as the fact that Rourke knows that Keating is a fraud. Rand describes him this way: he was great. Great is the number of people who told him so. He was right. Right is the number of people who believed it. He looked at the faces, at the eyes. He saw himself born in them. As she began to outline the fountainhead, Keating became the emblem of all that Rourke is not. I try to trace to combine Rand's personal experience with specific parts of her work in order to get to know Rand as a writer and as a woman in this book.
Thank you. And now, Mimi, would you give us a reading, please?